A new day begins. Gentle sunlight filters through the leaves, casting delicate, silk-like streaks of light onto the ground. The breeze sweeps by, causing the vines to sway softly, as if whispering something to the peaceful morning. No one knows that, in this small corner by the pond, there once stood a girl trembling in the night, driven from her home by her stepfather and his son. Wu Yen, that girl, had to flee in the dark, seeking shelter amid despair. And it was then that the director reached out to help, bringing her to this remote place and building her a kitchen to start her life anew. After a day of hard work and effort by the director and Wu Yen, the outline of the kitchen gradually emerged. The bamboo poles were woven together firmly and neatly, like the perseverance that both of them were trying to build for Wu Yen's new life. Only the roof was missing for the kitchen to be complete. Wu Yen had carefully gathered coconut leaves earlier. Now, bundles of leaves were being lifted up to form the roof. In that vast blue sky, nameless conversations echoed. His words, Wu Yen's soft replies, gentle but enough to stir something warm in both their hearts. He no longer looked as serious as he usually did when the pressure of work weighed on his shoulders. Was it Wu Yen's presence that changed him? He diligently and carefully placed the palm leaves on the roof, layer by layer, carefully tying them together. Wu Yen stood below, a wooden-handled knife in her hand. She cut the bamboo into even pieces, then carefully sharpened each edge, her small hands much more steady than when he first met her, when she was trembling after being kicked out of her home. The director was on the roof, finishing the last layer of leaves. The excess parts were meticulously trimmed by him, falling to the ground in small pieces. The kitchen gradually took shape. The two young people neatly arranged the bamboo poles, and the director used a hammer to secure them in place to make a fence. Next to him, Wu Yen was still attentively assisting him, holding the bamboo, adjusting the ropes, tying knots, not missing a single detail. By the time the last coconut leaves were tied in place, the kitchen was covered from front to back with a layer of sturdy bamboo fencing and slats. Outside, Wu Yen repurposed old bricks that people thought would be discarded to make a floor. Under the scorching sun, she persistently carried each brick into the new kitchen. Under her diligent hands, the bricks were neatly arranged in rows. Soon, the floor was complete, clean, sturdy, and surprisingly beautiful. Wu Yen did not waste the leftover bamboo. She skillfully nailed them together and used a board that had been discarded outside the yard to make a small table, something she hoped would one day hold the first bowls of rice of her new life. In that peaceful space, all that could be heard was the director's sawing and the steady sound of coconut leaves being trimmed. Those sounds blended with the wind, sounding like the rhythm of a life being rebuilt from ruins. When everything was nearly finished, Wu Yen hurried into the house to get a broom, then swept the yard in front of the kitchen clean. She gathered every scrap of bamboo, every dry leaf, and burned them neatly. And when the flames rose, the bright orange light illuminated her face. No longer the frightened girl of yesterday, but someone who was beginning to believe in life again. In that light, the new kitchen glowed brightly, solid as a promise. From here on, no one would chase her away anymore. From here on, Wu Yen had a place to start over. And from here on, she was no longer alone. The kitchen was just finished, the smell of fresh bamboo and coconut leaves still lingering in the air, blending with the joy evident on both their faces. The director stood with his arms folded, admiring the simple but warm result, while Wu Yen kept stroking the small bamboo table she had made herself. In that moment, peace seemed to have settled in this old corner of the earth. But then, like a dark cloud suddenly obscuring the sunlight, that tranquility was shattered. From behind the small house, the silhouette of a middle-aged man appeared. Walking with a swagger, his face etched with impatience and aggression, he stopped in the middle of the path. In the quiet afternoon air, a girl's voice reached his ears. It was a voice he could not forget, even after so many days. Wu Yen's voice. He froze. His ears had not deceived him. His heart could not ignore it. Wu Yen's stepfather, who was searching for her to force her to pay off the enormous debt his own son had incurred, immediately turned and headed down the small dirt path leading straight to the two of their makeshift home. In the newly built kitchen, the director and Wu Yen were still chatting cheerfully, admiring each piece of bamboo slat and each coconut leaf that had been securely tied. Wu Yen's soft laughter had just reached the air when, rustle, the sound of someone stepping on dry leaves. Uyen froze. Her eyes suddenly dimmed, then filled with panic. The instinct of someone who had always lived in fear made her jump up and rush to the back of the house. She hid behind a coconut tree, her shoulders shaking slightly. Uyen clasped her hands in front of her chest, her face pale. Everything spoke of fear without words. The director only had time to turn his head before she disappeared from view. Before he could understand what was happening, the middle-aged man stepped into the yard. His eyes were sharp as knives, scanning every corner, as if he wanted to tear everything apart to find what he was looking for. The moment he saw that figure, the director suddenly remembered every word Uyen had told him about her cruel and heartless stepfather. His heart tightened. There was no doubt about it. He had come. Uyen's stepfather waved his hand, signaling for him to come to where he was standing. With no other choice, the director had to calmly approach. Before he could even stand still, the man asked bluntly, "Is that girl named Uyen here?" He hesitated for a moment, trying to organize his words. He knew that if he answered wrongly or showed any weakness, Uyen would be dragged away. And then everything she had tried so hard to escape would start all over again. But the man was impatient. With his aggressive, thuggish nature, he suddenly stormed in as if he wanted to tear the kitchen apart to find Uyen. Fortunately, the director had anticipated this. He immediately stood in front of the door, his voice firm. "You have no right to come in here. Right? That girl owes my family money. I have to bring her back," the man shouted, pointing his finger straight at him, his threatening voice unrestrained. At the back of the house, Uyen trembled as she circled around to the back door of the kitchen, hiding behind the rough wooden door. She hugged herself tightly, scared to the point of breathlessness. Just one glance from her stepfather, and she would be dragged back to the dark place where she lived every day in oppression and tears. She closed her eyes, praying that this time she would be safe. Outside, the arguing grew louder. The director had no choice. He looked straight at the man, his voice cold. "If you come in, I'll call the police. And I guarantee you don't want to get in trouble with the law." His words were sharp as a knife, and they worked. The man hesitated. Despite his aggression, he knew the law was not something he could easily provoke. He gritted his teeth and backed away step by step. Before leaving the yard, he still turned his head to look at the small kitchen. In the twilight, his eyes were filled with anger mixed with hatred. He pointed at the house and growled each word. "I'll be back. Don't think you can hide it forever." Then he turned on his heel, his swaggering gait gradually disappearing down the red dirt road. The peaceful sky suddenly felt heavy. Even the slightest breeze carried a sense of unease. In the small kitchen, Uyen sat slumped by the door, her heart beating wildly. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not because she was weak, but because she didn't know if fate would really smile on a 19-year-old girl. In front of her, the director clenched his fists. His eyes no longer held the calmness of the morning, but the resolve of someone ready to protect someone with all his strength. The storm was about to return, and this time, he wouldn't let Uyen face it alone. When the middle-aged man's silhouette disappeared behind the row of coconut trees at the end of the dirt road, the director dared to breathe a sigh of relief. He immediately turned to the back of the house, his voice low but urgent. "Uyen, go, he's gone." The leaves behind the coconut tree rustled softly. Uyen stepped out, her face pale as if she had just awakened from a dark dream. Her hands were still trembling slightly, her eyes bewildered, unable to regain their composure. Seeing this, the director gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay now. I'm here." The two sat down in front of the small house, on the newly laid earthen steps, like two soldiers who had survived a silent siege. The breeze from the pond blew in cool and refreshing, but Uyen's heart was still filled with a vague fear. The director understood this better than anyone. "Don't worry. If he comes back, I'll take care of it. From now on, you must be very careful, but don't let fear swallow the peace you've just found." Uyen bowed her head, nodded slightly, her lips pressed together to stop her voice from trembling. Suddenly, the director had an idea. "How about we go to the market and buy some things? Then, cook our first meal in the new kitchen, so you can see that this is your home. It's your safe place." That simple idea was like a rope pulling Uyen out of the deep pit of worry. She looked up, her eyes still fearful, but now with a hint of warmth. "Yes, let's go." The two stood up, Their shadows stretched long on the dirt road leading to the market, lighthearted yet still tinged with unease. Their first stop was a small grocery store by the roadside. They stood in front of rows of pots and pans. The director picked up a clay stove, smiling as he said, "Our bamboo and leaf-roofed kitchen only suits this." Win laughed, her first smile after the panic. It was a light smile, but enough to brighten the space. Then they both stopped at the small market. They passed the seafood stall, where baskets of shrimp were still jumping. Passing the vegetable stall, the lush green colors stretched out like soothing Win's tired eyes. Walking and talking, they discussed their first meal in the new kitchen. "How about we make sour snakehead fish soup, then add some boiled vegetables?" The first meal has to be flavorful, like starting a new life. Hearing this, Win's heart suddenly warmed. The feeling of being chosen, of deciding for herself what to eat, something that seemed so small, was so precious to her. Meanwhile, in another place, Win's stepfather returned to his house in a rage. Before the door had even closed, he slammed his fist down on the table as if venting all his anger at losing the girl. He sat down, clenching his cigarette, his eyes bulging. Regret, greed, and scheming twisted into a poisonous smoke in his head. "She can't hide forever," he muttered, his voice hoarse. And then, those cloudy eyes narrowed, as if a new idea was taking root. Another plot, darker, more dangerous, and certainly more dangerous for Win. The afternoon sky darkened. The wind blew from afar through the thatched roofs, carrying with it an indescribable sense of unease. At the small market, Win still did not know that fate was testing her once again. But this time, she was no longer alone. Returning to the small house by the pond, peaceful as if nothing had ever happened, Win and the director carried the basket of groceries they had just bought at the market. The bamboo door, still fragrant with the scent of sunshine, swung open, and the two walked straight into the newly built kitchen, where the first fire was waiting for them to light. Each person had their own task, busy yet warm-hearted. The director bent down to pick up the old bricks that Win had salvaged, arranging them neatly to form the wood-burning stove floor. Each brick placed down represented a bit of patience, a bit of peace he wanted to give to the little girl who had endured so much anxiety. As for Win, with her newly purchased clay pot, she began washing rice and lighting the stove. A wisp of smoke rose from the wood stove, curling around the late afternoon sunlight into a gentle ray that broke apart before the thatched roof. The fire in the new kitchen blazed, warm and gentle like a protective embrace. While he watched the pot of rice so it wouldn't boil over, Win quietly stepped behind the house, where there was a small water jar and an old aluminum basin. She washed the vegetables one by one, the water flowing like a small stream, blending with the gentle breathing she hadn't been able to do for many days. The wooden table that Win had made from a piece of wood discarded in the yard now stood in the middle of the kitchen. And today, for the first time, her small hands prepared a meal on the table she had made, a silent thank you to the person who had given her shelter. The aroma of soup wafted through the air. The pot lid lifted, steam billowing out like a sign of a new life taking shape. Win tasted it again, her eyes lighting up when the flavor was just right. The director watched her busily, then bent down to help pick vegetables, wash dishes, and add wood to the stove. With a few deft movements, the sumptuous meal was soon complete. Under the newly erected bamboo roof, on the neatly arranged old tile floor, amidst the fragrant smoke of bamboo and rattan, the two sat down. The meal was simple but beautiful like a painting. A steaming pot of sour soup, a plate of fresh green vegetables, a bowl of red chili fish sauce. Win gently invited him. He smiled in response. In that moment, the first meal was not just a meal, but a small, warm milestone, marking a new part of her life. The afternoon breeze blew through, gently shaking the thatched roof. Peace enveloped the small house, as if wanting to hold on to this beautiful moment for a long time. But outside, the undercurrents were still silently churning.